Okay, so this is a Plutonian vlog. Today's the 26th of March, 2017. It's actually almost a year from right this moment when I started having premonitions about, kind of fatalistic things going on that would be Uranus-Pluto square-ish kind of things. So, I have obviously been going through some, extensive growth thing. And because Pluto's actually been transiting over my natal Neptune, I've been going through like a spiritual awakening kind of thing. I know that everybody's going through a spiritual awakening kind of thing, and to an extent there is transit events transpiring that could explain those things, but I'm literally going through it, and it's not even me trying to say that for brownie points, but it's because I've been fighting it the whole time, and it's been making it worse on me. But I feel like I have complete control over my mental capacities, and that's what my Pluto and my Mercury conjunct are associated with. But yeah, anyway, so long story short, even though every time I say that it turns into a novel, right? I've been doing videos on YouTube for about a year and a half now. The quality was horrible, and even I knew that to an extent when I first started doing them, but I was doing them more for documentation of what I was coming up with at the time. So I had credible documentation not only for, actually what I said, but so I had some sort of, documented kind of validation, aka YouTube's published timestamp on them for when I actually came up with these ideas. For whatever reason, I felt compelled that I needed to do that. So, over this time frame, like last year, I started finding obsidian everywhere, which has to do with volcanoes, right? I've been getting very good at predicting earthquakes, along with my friend Ross kind of helping and contributing some, theories with that, or hypothesis, I guess, of where we think things are going to strike. And then I obviously started getting into the Neptune square Saturn that I translated to be attributed to the ocean being contaminated with radiation. So essentially, the Uranus-Pluto square is responsible for the instability, the earthquakes, the volcanic activity. It's directly associated with, Pluto's associated with radiation and nuclear power, and Uranus, uranium, different kinds of, alternative powers. And them squaring together also causes instability with Earth, the tectonic plates in the Earth and everything like that. So it's the Uranus-Pluto square that's actually directly responsible for the Fukushima plant being, destabilized and then leaking into the ocean. When Neptune squared Saturn, that was past the point of no return, that there's so much toxicity with all the radiation in the ocean that there's no way to reverse any of the long-lasting damage that will now transpire or is transpiring because of this. Okay? So last year I started going absolutely apeshit, and I'm actually thinking that's exactly when Pluto was going over my Neptune, or something like that. It had to be something directly involving my natal chart, but I was convinced. Not only was I convinced that Yellowstone was going to go off, but I was convinced that the entire west coast of the United States would be inhabitable, would be an Arctic winter. I actually referenced it directly to a Nostradamus quatrain that has something to do with, for 4 years the rainbow will not appear, and then for 4 years the rainbow will appear every day, and the earth in itself will grow more parched, and something. I translated that specific quatrain to events that were supposed to happen this year or last year. So, as time goes on, I also have been really obsessed with cancer, fighting cancer kind of conditions or whatever. All different types of cancer, because I have cancer that runs in my family. I have friends that have battled with cancer, and I just felt like it was something that I needed to get into. Well, obviously, excessive exposure to radiation actually causes cancer, right? Okay? So, why have I been obsessed with making these homeopathic treatments? Because those are the ones that initially inspired me to start making the tinctures, right? So even tonight, I was hanging out with all my Earth sign friends. I have a Taurus friend, a Virgo friend, and a Capricorn friend. And every time I get together with them, we always make stuff. So we actually made this apple cider, garlic, honey, a mixture that you take 2 tablespoons each day, and it's the equivalent antibacterial properties of penicillin, and it actually prevents and even stops the radical cell growth of cancer and all that kind of good stuff. Helps detox things and everything. But anyway, so as I was making that tonight, talking to my Taurus friend who has a psychic signature in his chart, more or less, I don't know if he actually realizes it, and then I have another friend that's almost got a chart identical to him that's also a Taurus. I don't know if either of those two actually realize it, but when I'm with them and they just say some off-the-wall random thing that probably nobody else even fucking, absorbs or thinks about or anything, I don't even think about it right that second, but later when I'm by myself, I go, oh my god, that thing that Ross or that thing that Curtis said makes fucking sense. And I just had that. So one of my friends, my Aries friend that I actually talk about, she needed a ride over to like the Seattle area. And I've been warning people about the Cascadia Fault. So not only did the Uranus-Pluto square cause earthquakes and the tectonic plates to be shifting, but the Ring of Fire tectonic plate actually stems from all the way over where Fukushima happened, all the way down through Papua New Guinea, and then by Antarctica, and then goes up by Chile, and then goes up through California, the San Andreas Fault, and then the fault line that's the Cascadia Fault that's due to crack at any moment, right? So I've been freaking out about the Cascadia Fault thing. If you're familiar with the Cascadia Fault, everybody's like, yeah, it's overdue for a slip. Yeah, you need to shut the fuck up now, first off. I'm not trying to say that to be an asshole, but hello. Okay, so if you download this Earthquake Trackers app that you can get, or you can even look at, simulations online, every single spot in the Ring of Fire, basically the big puzzle piece that takes up the Pacific Ocean and then goes from our west coast to, Japan and all them, every single spot besides the Cascadia Fault and like the Gulf of Alaska, which actually even the Gulf of Alaska has been having some activity now too, we're actually now starting to have some earthquakes that are happening in the Cascadia Fault. The only part of this tectonic plate that is not actively moving in violent fashions as of right now is the Cascadia Fault and the San Andreas Fault, which is the same fucking thing. Like a 500, mile north to south. It's the same fucking thing, okay? So I've been freaking out telling people to get away from the west coast. I've come to the conclusion now that me freaking out about Yellowstone basically wiping out, because it wasn't even so much that I was saying, oh my god, the volcano's gonna ruin everything. I was more fixated on telling people how far they have to get to be safe. And I kept emphasizing on, even if you're not in the immediate annihilation zone, and you make sure that you're covered and you have supplies and stuff, all that ash all over all the ground is going to basically make the entire west coast uninhabitable. So that was more or less what I was fixating on when I was telling people what they need to prepare for. So if we just forget for a second that I was kind of off my rocker last summer, and that it's not Yellowstone, if you think of the way that rain happens, by it taking up water out of the ocean, bringing it over, and then pouring it onto land, there's no fucking way, I don't care how cool Mother Nature is, that they're being able to filter out all the radiation contaminants. And by the way, did you know that salt, the compound of salt, is actually used to absorb the gamma, alpha, beta, and radiation, the radium levels? That's how nuclear physicists actually test to see how the level of absorbance of radium and radiation is with salt. What is the fucking ocean made up of? Anybody? Salt water, right? So, not only is our ocean completely radioactive, but at least from one of the science journals that I've read, it's going to be radioactive like the day that it was, exposed to it for at least 60 years. Yeah. So that means for sure, not only is all the Gulf coasts of anything, eventually the radiation will spread so far, and because it's basically absorbing as much as it possibly can, exposure-wise, ionization, to the salt in the salt water, wait a minute. Wait, salt is actually somehow left out when it rains. So would that mean that no, there's still got to be radiation in the water. Okay, so it won't be as substantial. That makes me kind of feel better. But anyway, so that being said, my whole freak out about the west coast not being habitable is going to be totally legit and is now happening already. there's going to start being a huge, not even recalls, because there's no point. There's no point in recalling every single fucking vegetation from California. There's no point in telling the 1.5 billion people that live, on the west side of the I-5, that's including Seattle and Portland. There's no point in telling them that it's all going to crash on top of them and they're all going to die, because there's no way that all those people could get out and then also have the means of relocating. There's no way. So they're not going to tell you. And even when, mainstream news is kind of hinting at, the Cascadia Fault, I think it's going to break soon. If the mainstream media is actually getting to the point where it's kind of like, humoring it and telling you, then you have a problem, okay? So now let's get to the astrology part of this. So the Uranus-Pluto square is obviously involved with these earthquakes and tsunamis and, the radiation and all that, right? So obviously the Uranus-Pluto square would be directly involved with the extensive magnitude of earthquakes. So you notice that we've had earthquakes, sporadically be like coming up in clusters more and more, and it's been more frequent since 2011-ish, right? Okay, that's when after the Uranus-Pluto square had a couple of good alignments or whatever. So once it started getting its mojo going, that's when we started seeing an increase of earthquakes, right? Exactly. Okay, so now as of September, it would have been late September, which is funny, because that's just a couple weeks before I started freaking out about Yellowstone. But not like I'm trying to use that to validate that, but that could explain why I was so manic and freaking out about it. Like, I was so anxious. I was almost having a heart attack, thinking maybe I should go on actual anxiety pills, because I was freaking out so hard. Okay, so right about October to November, when I really was like expecting it, that's when Jupiter would have been in Libra, right? And it would have been going into Libra, at least like within the first 10-degree decan kind of thing. So now, within the last 4 or 5 months, we've had Jupiter with an orb to not only be in opposition with Uranus, but to make a T-square with the Uranus and Pluto, right? So if the Uranus-Pluto square is responsible for earthquakes and all this instability, and we add Jupiter into the mix, what does Jupiter do? Jupiter magnifies or exaggerates things, right? So we've been seeing earthquakes still happening in the same kind of regions, but now they're getting up into instead of them being like 2 or 3s, they're getting up into 3s, 4s, 5s, and even the places like where that eclipse happened the other year, that I was saying that when it starts in Papua New Guinea, that it's going to be an emphasis on earthquakes in that area. That area now, since that's part of the Ring of Fire, has been having 5s and 6s regularly, like it's nothing. Right. And now they're starting around the Ring of Fire, like in Chile and stuff even, it's starting to get higher in the numbers with the Richter scale or whatever too, right? So now, the pattern that I've been noticing is that the Cascadia Fault in particular is due any time. We're also going to be having an eclipse that goes over, goes over from the west coast all the way to the east coast this year too, which that eclipse actually happening the same way that one did, from Papua New Guinea all the way to, Hawaii, is going to basically be doing similar things, right? So right now, Jupiter's actually retrograde. It's going to be retrograde until June. I noticed with the way that I do things, because I'm so inconsistent and sporadic, thanks to my, Gemini rising and my Saturn and Sagittarius, the only time that I feel random motivation out of nowhere to fucking really fixate on a specific transit event, to where I go obsessive, like my Plutonian kind of thing goes obsessive on it, it turns out to be something way bigger than what I actually thought it was. So the fact that the things that I continue to I'll just randomly get this inspiration to fixate on right now, actually are all tying back right into the original thing that I felt the need to go out of my way to make a YouTube channel and to start warning people about all this stuff. I don't know what it is, but I'm just, and I don't say this as a way to brag, but I'm literally a Uranus-Pluto square expert. I think because I have Uranus on my angles with Saturn, which is, the ancient ruler associated with Aquarius too, and I'm a Plutonian. So I think I kind of live out vicariously through things that would transpire within the Uranus-Pluto square, which is why I don't feel very out of place, and why everybody else seems to feel like like the world's just toppling all over them, and I'm just like, yeah, guys, I'm right there with you. I get it. It's because I feel like I've like been living something like the Uranus Pluto square my entire existence. That makes sense. That makes all kinds of sense. I have all kinds of squares with my Pluto and my Mercury and Scorpio. Yep. But anyway, so basically what I'm getting at, long story short, again, because this is long story short, this will be under 20 minutes, right? If you live west of the I-5, meaning that if you live anywhere from like Vancouver, BC, Seattle, Portland, down to like the California Bay Area, like the San Francisco Bay, if you live anywhere near there, get the fuck out. Now, you have till June. Because if my theory is right, which I'm going off of random sporadic, coincidental associations that I just fixate on the whole time, that have proven accurately with, actual events or whatever, or environmental factors, validating it. Once Jupiter goes direct again, and this T-square is reactivated yet again, that'll be probably the last oomph that is needed for the Cascadia Fault to slip. And so for sure, everything from Vancouver, BC, probably, well, I can't say for sure from there, but like the top of Washington State, all the way to the San Francisco Bay, will become fucking gone. It'll be likely toppled, like literally the other plate is going to shift over the top of it. It's going to become the next Atlantis. And I've made fucking jokes about California becoming the next Atlantis, and I didn't actually think that I was being serious. Like, I was making an asshole joke. But I've been making that asshole joke for years, and I'm actually finding out during this Uranus Pluto square shit that all my asshole jokes that I've made are actually becoming true, and that scares the hell out of me. Because I've said some really fucked up things, and I've said some really scary things that insinuate that a lot of people are gonna die. I'm sorry. It was never meant to be real. I'm not saying that I caused that, but I just keep thinking back like, holy shit, and I've kept some of them to myself. I'm like, I'm not going to tell people I ever said that. And then I see it happen, and I'm like, oh my god. Okay, but anyway, it is the end of March right now. You have until, I would guarantee that, past the end of summer will be too late if it doesn't happen. But first off, the entire West Coast is going to be inhabitable over the next few years. Probably give it maybe 5 to... Well, I would say when Uranus goes into Taurus for sure. Uranus being associated with the uranium or the radium or whatever, the contaminants. Taurus being associated with the ground and nourishment. That a couple years into Taurus season, or into Taurus being in Uranus, will signify that the entire West Coast will be uninhabitable. Yeah. Yep. That's it. And, of course, not many people are going to watch this, and that's their loss. Don't try to convince people to watch this. They don't want to, because that's one less person that you're going to have to fight for to get where you got to go. I'm just at least doing this for documentation, to remind myself, to tell any of my friends that, I haven't had a chance to really get to them, because I'm going through a Saturn return thing, and I'm dealing with other bullshit besides the psychic stuff going on. And just to be nice for a couple of people that probably, actually listen to everything I fucking say, and I owe it to them more or less for actually humoring me, to let them know what's really going on, because this is probably what they're listening for anyway, or to get a heads up with this about the shit that's really important. Like this is really important. I'm gonna go now. Goodbye.